Going to the game.
Um, hey guys, hey everyone who's in here. Feel free to break in and speak if you'd like to. Um, we were just gonna go ahead and start right now. I put my thread up here and John's thread on this book. And I just wanted to say too, like before we even start, I just appreciated that this book was like a disaster narrative. like it focused on something going like something being innovated but going wrong in the end. And I think so many like sports narratives are about like overcoming adversity to win, but to me sometimes the more interesting narrative is like overcoming adversity and not winning. You know what I mean? So I appreciated that about this book, and the fact that he like, you know, put all the different timelines next to each other was fascinating to me. Like the King's stuff, I have to say, even though it was pretty juicy, like most of it I already knew. There was a few things that I didn't know, and that was really cool to find out some of those. But most of like the DeMarcus, the IT, the coach stuff, I already knew that stuff. That's sort of like what I feel like we as Kings fans kind of carry around with us all the time as like, our like lore failure, as I called it earlier. So I didn't really include any of that in my breakdown just because, like I said, it's not something like I love to like go dwell on more or anything like that. Um, and do you have anything else right now, John, or should I just start going down my thread or?
Well, I'll start with a little bit about the book in general. I don't know if anyone's read a Michael Lewis book. Like Moneyball is the main one that's sports related, I believe, and The Big Short, which is a great movie, was also a great book by Michael Lewis. But it kind of reminds me of Michael Lewis book in the sense that it's a page turner. Like you're kind of just going from team to team and person to person on each team, and like this, it's drama. There's stuff going on. People like people signing, people being cut, people getting traded, picks. Like each draft is like what's going to happen in this draft, and like this is why it happened the way it happened, and it's a page turner, and it's pretty fun to read, and and also the last thing I mentioned is that there's in that regard is that there's plenty of cursing in there, which is kind of it feels real. It doesn't feel like a glossed over, sanitized book. It feels like there's cursing, just like in the Michael Lewis book too. There's cursing that feels real. He also talked to over 300 people. He said in the acknowledgments in the league, like players, coaches, front office staff, scouts, agents, owners. He talked to a ton of people on the record. They were all on the record as far as I saw, and they were giving him tons of tidbits of information. And then I don't want to steal what you said, Megaloo, but you kind of made me think. You said it is that like he kind of like kind of reads like some gossip sometimes, kind of salacious stuff that he's sharing, that the people are sharing that he's talking to, because he's not like adding on to stuff. He's kind of just basically getting quotes from people, tons of quotes. So that's kind of how it was, and but it's very entertaining and definitely worth a read for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me too, like that stuff all definitely added to the story and made it more entertaining, like you said. But then when I went to go like sort of edit down my thoughts on the book, I found myself kind of like pushing a lot of that stuff aside and like zeroing in on like the actual tanking stuff. How it actually permanently affected the league by changing the rules, and then the impact. Like it was fascinating too that most of those people, I think, the couple other books that we've read that have been like historical kind of, microcosmic narratives, have been so old that a lot of the people aren't around anymore. And this one was so cool because almost everybody's still in the league, or like in the league in some capacity, or impacting the league in some capacity still. And that was really cool. And then the Twitter part was awesome. Like that I could just go look up things on Twitter, like some of the meme kind of stuff and stuff like that is out there, and it was like famous stuff. So like I definitely also when he's describing Brad Stevens, like that the IT team that Brad Stevens had, and when Brad Stevens kind of came into his own as a coach. I remember that year watching that team and watching all those ATOs, and he was so famous for always having a brilliant ATO like every time they came back in the game. And so that was really cool. It's just like the I don't know what you call it, the closeness of the timeline to where we are now.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and I feel in some capacity like I know these people better because I did actually watch them or see them on Twitter and all that kind of thing. For what it's worth, whereas like with the whatever 2000, with Jerry Reynolds' book and stuff like that, like those people are kind of gone at this point. Um, yeah. Let me see. Let me focus on my thread because that's how I usually like
Sure.
remember how if I even put the right thread in here. But definitely, one thing that really surprised me was that Daryl Morey, Ryan McDonough, and I think Hinkie also were all members of the Celtics at one point.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That was crazy to me. I can't find my thread for some reason. Let's see here. Technical difficulties.
Oh, I think you have it in there, don't you?
Yeah, somewhere I just can't get to like the thread part.
Yeah.
It's doing
Here.
weird stuff. There we go. Hmm. Oh,
Okay, I'm going to share it to the space.
yeah, maybe I shared the wrong thing.
I think that's yours in the first one now. First one on the left.
Yeah. Oh, it doesn't bring up my full thing. I'm gonna have to run down.
You share the
Um,
first one. Okay.
I don't know why it's not like rendering the thread part. It just, for some reason, it just renders. Anyways, that was completely fascinating. And when he was talking about, oh, here we go. I'm just in the wrong place. There we go. When he was talking about, um, that there's kind of this duality of like, of GMs in the league, of like the crusty old players who think that like the eye test is everything and they're going to build the teams, and then on the other side there's like these analytics nerds who are going to like numbers it all to hell, and then in the middle there's sort of like Danny Ainge, who was like, to me he's kind of like fascinated by the analytics part, but at the same time in some ways he sort of like outsmarted that system by also being like a crusty player, like having great scouting. And I'm sure some of that was totally um, made possible by analytics as well. But, and the fact that all of these, again, were like from his front office is incredible to me. Especially Daryl Morey. I had never really heard like Daryl Morey's origin story or anything like that, or how he came to be a GM, and the fact that he now has acolytes as GMs all over the league, including ours, is kind of fascinating.
Right.
I mean, especially since, and I guess the other part about this is it's such an interesting time to read this book. I think it'll continue to be an interesting time as long as people like Tank, and as long as people like Daryl Morey are still GMs, and Danny Ainge is still a GM. But I mean, because Philadelphia is having such a weird start to the year, and it just kind of adds so many more questions to the entire narrative of like, is tanking worth it? Does, did the process work? All of that kind of thing of like, really the only thing that's left in Philadelphia at this point is Joel. Like, I mean, Ben's gone, Markel's gone. Um, I meant to look up how long Brett Brown actually lasted in Philadelphia because I know he was the coach after Hinkie
Okay,
left.
I'll look it up.
Yeah. And that also was pretty fascinating.
I guess until 2020 it says here. But yeah, in his
Wow.
2019-20 season, he's
Yeah.
now an assistant coach on San Antonio again. He's back in San Antonio.
Yeah. So, just, I mean, the underlying premise, just so we agree, right, is just basically that you're going to tear down in order to collect assets from what you tear down, right? And then you're going to build back through the draft essentially, or through like young high upside cheap guys. And in Hinkie's case, as cheap as you can get them, right?
Well, he just
Um,
wanted to maintain flexibility, and he was just providing the Hinky specials, 1 year guaranteed at a low amount, 3 years unguaranteed, but you have the
yeah,
contract, so like it's a team option essentially for 3 more
yeah,
years at a low amount.
right.
Um, which is I can talk about that for a little bit because that's one of my things in my brief thread is that Hinkie, you know, obviously a super smart guy. Cognitively.
Yes,
Emotionally, I'm not sure he was super smart. I'm not sure he was a super smart emotional guy. Emotional intelligence, you know what I'm saying? Emotional IQ. I'm not so sure. I mean, he treated players like numbers, which a lot of people do, but he went to the extreme. He went to the extreme treating players like numbers. He froze out the media, wouldn't provide them information, which is like makes sense. It's logical that like should you do that to all media? Just not all media, but like most media to freeze them out of like information. He pissed off all the agents with the Hinky specials. If he hadn't been so extreme in his tank and in his behavior and in his methods, he might still be managing Philadelphia. And I do believe, they look at Brett Brown's record. I have it up on Basketball Reference. He was on Philadelphia in 4 years. He had a win percentage of he won all set of games, 19 games, 18 games, 10 games, 28 games. Then starting in
wow.
2017-18, he won 52, 51, and then 43 out of 30. He got fired towards the end of the season, I guess, or that was the shortened season. So 5.589 win percentage, 0.6222, 0.634 going up from the bottom, from the most recent. So, I mean, the teams sucked for a long time while Hinkie was doing his Grandmaster plan, but then they got better because of Hinkie's Grandmaster plan. I mean, they just
Yeah.
didn't, but he just kind of went too far. He went full Hinkie. You never go full
Yeah.
Hinkie.
I think that is part of the moral of the story for sure.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, Sam Presti is kind of doing the same
yeah,
thing right now, right? It's just that he's doing it in like a more personable way. He's not, the contracts aren't as obviously nutty. But I mean, again, you can get into an argument about how long that tank has been going on or what have you. But I mean, some people would say it's actually been going for like 7 years and it's been broken momentarily by, taking on bad contracts that happen to, outperform the tank, like I don't know, Chris Paul, obviously, and Dennis Schroeder and stuff like that. But he's
right. Chris
been just
Paul.
like
Yeah,
onboarding bad contracts for years and years and years in an effort to just like massively accrue assets, right? But I don't think he's pissed agents off, and I don't think he's pissed the league off, and he hasn't had any young guys get in trouble either, which seems like it was sort of like the Okafor thing, Jaleel Okafor / Christian Wood street fight or whatever it is, seems like that was like a major turning point for Hinkie for like the league
Right.
tolerating the situation, because it seems like as long as it wasn't in the news and people weren't making a big deal about it, it was going to kind of be allowed to keep going. But as soon as people started like investigating it a little bit more, that's when it sort of all fell apart and everybody was like, well, they need mentors and, and that kind of thing. And then you get too many chefs in the kitchen, at that, you know. So, um yeah, yeah. I just
Yeah. I just wanted to talk about. I know he wasn't really. He was in the book. Pricey was in the book for drafting Durant, Westbrook, and Harden in successive drafts,
yes.
and drafting well. He was also in the book a couple times that I highlighted because he was in there because he voted against the tanking change, the rules to how players picks are awarded in the lottery. I think in the second time that they voted on that, he was the only one that voted in favor of that. I mean, his franchise that he works for, the owners
Yeah.
voted in that way.
And I
But
think like I don't know that it was said totally explicitly in here, but I mean he obviously mentions that OKC being a small market, the only way they view that they can adequately build is through the draft, right? So it's like this very limited. I mean, I think it's part of the conversation that he has about LA, and I think Sacramento's kind of in this boat, although I think we tend to like blame more on being in a small market than really we should. I think that our problem has been like a reluctance to move off of assets quick enough, and then a reluctance to like accrue assets in enough depth that we actually can make mistakes. Like we're always like making mistakes, and then when those mistakes don't work out, we don't have like an over performer that we can like slot into the mistake spot. you
mm,
know
mhm, mhm.
um so I don't I yeah um so anyways, to kind of go more through the book as chronologically,
Okay.
if I can here, let me see. Oh, he talks about Doc Rivers getting traded. I thought that was pretty fascinating. I kind of remember it happening at the time, but I don't think I like followed it that well. And it was just an interesting dynamic that a coach could even get traded.
Yeah,
And
I
and
was
then
surprised by that when it happened. At least, yeah, it was
yeah,
weird.
and then he goes into like the whole like all the new coaches getting installed in all these different places. Well, Hinkie just like took his time finding like the right guy who would really like stay even keeled throughout the process, which I think he did in Brett Brown. It sounds like Brett Brown was like,
Hmm.
Mr. Super Optimist, and just was able to like somehow move on from each loss and understood what they were trying to do.
Yeah, I
And
think
then
Kiki picked the right guy for sure. Because like Brett Brown was, as you kind of just said, he was positive. He was upbeat. He loved the game, and he wanted to teach the players. He was a good teacher at San Antonio, player development coach. Really, it's like
yeah,
he kind of got pigeonholed. I remember that little bit. He got pigeonholed at San Antonio for being so good at player development. He got pigeonholed there, but yeah, he was. It was. I thought it was kind of interesting that at the end of the book, they talk about how he aged like a president does. he,
oh
he used to
yeah,
have brown hair, but now he had gray hair after all the tanking. He had gray hair. You know, it was pretty funny. But
I love that he calls him a Australian too. Like that's just
yeah,
too like fairly like endearing slash annoying kind of, but
yeah.
but it's a great mix, I think.
But it's cool that he got
Um,
3 years to win. That's cool that they kept him around at
yes,
least, and he was good. He was a
yes,
good. They won a lot of games. I mean, he did win with Joel and Tobias Harris and a little bit with Jimmy Butler, and also of course with Ben Simmons. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, So Hinkie said that the draft is really hard and everybody's going to make mistakes. So we just want to have as many darts to throw at the dartboard as possible. That one stuck out to me because, yes, I think that's definitely what you want to do, right? Is just try and make a massive talent grab in like a 1 to 2 year span. Um, and then this one, I just know how difficult losing is on everybody, on the coaches. This was actually like, I think it's Lara Naga. I don't know how to say his name really, from Boston, but he said, I just know how difficult losing is on everybody, on the coaches, on management, on the fans, ownership, on the players. He listed recent painful examples. The Memphis Grizzlies experienced 3 straight years of 20 wins from 2006 to 2009, while trading Powell to Los Angeles in 2008. And then I think Josh got a little bit annoyed with me, like, hey, kid, we've thought a lot about this. We realized how hard it's going to be. So that was more about the Boston tank. But the
Mhm.
Boston tank, like, turned around, like, way faster, too, which, you know, I mean, it's crazy to think that Boston is like on their second part of the tank, though, because that tank that started, then like he signed like Jay and Evan and IT, and that team was so fun for like what 2 years,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
then by that time Tatum, Brown, and Marcus Smart. I mean, Marcus Smart was is this is his second good team, right?
Right. Right.
From the tank. So, I mean, that's a pretty fascinating thing to me as well, is that I think Boston is fascinating in that the majority of their primary talent is homegrown, which is unusual in this day and age, right? Because everybody's always trying to like he says at the very end, like find the disgruntled star who's ready to make the move,
Mhm.
and Boston has managed to hold on to all those guys. And Boston, I was trying to think, I was like, okay, Boston's been like amazing at drafting, but they also made a lot of mistakes. Like Romeo Langford's gone. I mean, there's a lot of Carson Edwards in the G League. Like, there's a lot of picks that they made that didn't pan out too.
Sure.
They just weren't the high picks, thankfully,
Yeah.
unlike us. And then the Kings seem trapped on the treadmill of mediocrity with a machine programmed to numbingly slow speed.
Mhm.
Like, and that is just the truth, Dart, if there ever was one.
Truth
Sadly.
are. It's funny.
Uh, and
But yeah, you're
oh,
right
and then
about Boston. I didn't think about Boston. I mean, they've drafted Grant Williams, Robert Williams, Tatum, Brown, and Smart, right? Out of their rotation.
yeah,
Anyone
I was
else?
trying to think. Well, so Al Horford's. Oh, and they yeah. So Al Horford is a big part of their
Right.
you know what they're doing. And I don't think they drafted him. I mean, he left and came back and sat on OKC's bench and
Right.
has had a weird career arc. But beyond that, I don't know. And they traded out a couple pieces this year. Like they traded out Daniel Theus for Malcolm Brogdon, and I think they traded Romeo Langford and someone else for Derek White last year mid-season. Oh,
Okay.
they got rid of Dennis Schroeder too, who wasn't like native to their talent pool either. Um,
Okay.
so, anyways, yeah, I mean they've definitely grown their own stars there. I would say, and then they have a type like I mean I think they talk a lot about how Danny's sort of idea was to find like a couple stars and then just surround them with like talented, switchable, versatile wings, basically, which seems to be like Toronto's game plan. Um, I would say that the Grizzlies have a really like original sort of like body diversity drafting policy where they pick up the guy who falls because he's like overweight or because he has short arms or because like his feet are too big or whatever it is, and then they still just look at like his shooting percentage, and win. Like, so I think there's some interesting, methods that have arisen out of this sort of like 1 to 2 tank. Like, I definitely think Danny Ainge's tanking out of all the tanks that he covers in here. There's Philly, there's Orlando, Sacramento, LA. Um, who am I missing? What other teams does he talk
Phoenix,
about in here? Oh,
Phoenix,
Phoenix, right, right.
um, Boston, and that's about it, probably. I think, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. So I think if we were to say which is the most successful tanking plan out of all those teams, I think we have to say it's Boston, right? I mean, I guess you could say the Suns, but the Suns took like a lot longer to be good.
Yeah, 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 yeah. The Suns didn't work. It didn't work. That's what I think. I mean, I don't know the history backwards and forwards like I know the Kings, but they kind of kept going and going and going longer than they probably should have. I mean, yeah, like you
Yeah,
said, took a long. I
yeah,
mean, they probably just they went. They did it twice. We've. I'm not sure that we tanked. Me meaning Sacramento Kings tanked. Why would you say that we tanked? We're in the book, but maybe that
right.
indicates that we did. But like, why would you say we tanked? I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean, I think like I don't know. I mean, I made a T-shirt the other day that says like not tanking, just bad.
yeah, exactly.
Like
That's what I'm just gonna say that. I'm just gonna say that we were taking. We were just bad. Yeah.
we never did like the asset accrual part. We never like
Right.
threw tons of darts at the board. I mean, I think maybe Vlade tried to. Like, I think in the De'Aaron Fox draft, I think he tried to like draft like a ton of different guys, but none of them worked out. So it's like,
Well, here's one more thing: is that like Vlade didn't go far enough, in my opinion. You don't want to go full Hinkie, but you don't want to go full Vlade or only Vlade. Like he traded, I guess the rumor is that he had 2 first round picks, but then he had a better that was the better deal 2 days ago was 2 first round picks from New Orleans.
oh,
But something
okay.
that was said by someone leaking something changed it to 1 first round pick. So he got that from New Orleans. He got Buddy Hield. That's what's one player asset. He got that pick, which became the 10th pick, I believe, which we turned into Justin Jackson, Harry Giles by trading it down, and I think we had Frank Mason as well
Yeah,
from that trade as well, though, right? But then in the summer, he signed George Hill, who was supposed to be. He seemed like he was still pretty good for not a star, but a good point guard. And then we signed Zach Randolph, who pretty much everyone knew was bad. He was just getting money. And we signed Vince Carter, who was a great dude, but also not very good anymore, to mentor the young guys, apparently. But that's not
yeah,
how you can get mentors for a minimum contract, in my opinion, or maybe a little bit above the minimum contract, but not 12 million for Randolph over 2 years, so 24
right.
million, and 8 for Vince in 1 year, and like 21 over it's like 21 over 3 years or something like that for whatever it was for George. And he didn't like losing, so he demanded a trade pretty quickly. And Randolph didn't play the second year, and Carter was gone and went to Atlanta or whatever he did
Yeah.
after that year. And like, I mean, did Fox become what Fox is now because of those guys? Maybe, but probably not. Probably would have been Fox
I
even
mean, I
without those
think you
guys.
could make the argument that those were Jaeger's guys, right? So those were the guys that were going to come in and teach the young guys his
Yeah,
system and all that kind of thing,
yeah,
which I'm not totally opposed to. But the only one that you ended up rolling for anything was Zach Randolph, who already wasn't
sure,
playing. He didn't play that year anyways. And then you
sure.
traded him to to Dallas for
Barnes,
Harrison
Barnes, yeah.
with Justin, right? Justin
Yeah, with Justin
Jackson.
JJ, with JJ, yeah.
Yeah.
That was a give Vladdy his flowers. Whoever was responsible for that, give it. Vladdy was the GM, so give Vladdy his flowers.
Yeah.
That was a good trade. He did a good thing there and got a good player, an asset in return for that, in return for those two players. But like I didn't say what you could do instead, which is to basically be available with all the cap room that the Kings had to take on either even just second round picks, but maybe a protected first and
Yeah.
a player that the team wants to trade into cap space in order to have cap space, in order to sign someone they want or take on someone they want. You know, being the third team, the third wheel, the third partner in a 3-team trade who facilitates it and gets draft capital or maybe even a prospect in exchange.
Well, and
That's what
that's
they could
one
have
thing that
done,
the
but
that the Kings have never ever done, as far
yes,
as I know,
yes,
is take on a bad contract for draft capital. That
yes,
would be like, and I mean, you look at what the way that OKC did it, and they did it in various ways. Like they did it with Al Horford. They had him. They did whatever the player wanted to do, basically, right? They had him sit out. That was cool with him. With Chris Paul, they had him play. That's what he wanted to do. They had Dennis Schroeder play. That's what he wanted. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
it's like, that's smart. They just built their, you know, I know it takes time. That's a whole year that you've committed to having that person, or, unless you can turn around and trade him again. But you still built your war chest,
Or you could buy
and
them out, but buy them out if they have a
yes,
1 year left in their deal. You can buy them out, release them, give them the opportunity to play somewhere and make a difference somewhere in a playoff team.
yeah,
Do a solid for them either by just waiving them, which you eat their whole salary, or because you have a lot of cap room at this point. You know, like the
yeah,
Kings did, like
exactly.
OKC does. You can afford to eat the salary, or you can negotiate a buyout. Either way, send them on their way to go play for a playoff team and make a difference, and be on good terms with them and their agent and the league. And
Yeah,
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 that's one way to do it. I mean, that's why I would say we tried sort of with when we didn't get worse when we traded DeMarcus though. We didn't get worse. You know, Tony
right.
Zipteris would tell you that, and he's right. You know, our record percentage wise was pretty much the same, like one game worse percentage wise
Yeah.
after we traded DeMarcus. We did not get any worse. Um, we were the same up to that point as with DeMarcus. So yeah. Anyway,
It's
but
hard
I
to
mean,
it's hard to read this book as a Kings fan. It really is, cuz and especially I think the Kings Herald guys have been kind of beating the drum of like do a real tank, or some of them. I
some of
shouldn't
them, yeah,
like
some of
yeah,
them,
I
yeah.
shouldn't like lump them all together like that, but of like just do 1 year of a real tank and you can turn it around. And then it's like no, that never really happens. So I for whatever reason I like choose to be an optimist every single year. I do think at minimum Monty's drafting has been exponentially better than Vladi's drafting. But it's also not really a long enough timeline to say that for sure yet, right? I mean, Vlade had like 2 out of 17 draft picks stay in the league, essentially. That's a pretty shit record. like,
Wow,
uh,
I didn't know it was that bad, but yeah, okay.
um,
And
and
Box was the consensus number five. I mean, if Box was the best
yeah,
player available, you had to pick him, or else you're an idiot at that
and
time.
I mean, people have said he had to pick Hallie there, and which I don't know if that's true or not. Who knows? And I
Hmm.
love Davion too. I know like he's sort of on the outs with the fan base at the moment because he's not like massively producing, but I think he's going to find his groove and be amazing for us. And then Keegan is so far, if he continues on this trajectory, like an obvious home run, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Keegan seems like he's going to prove a lot of people wrong. He keeps in a short period of time, he keeps getting better and adding new things to his game. It's pretty
yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
But yeah, so
That's
anyway.
his entire like brand. That's his entire like that Marin Fader article about him. I think it's Marin Fader, the Ringer article about him that she wrote pre-draft. He's like
Okay.
he's a very Pete Carril player, right? He's like, I might not be the most talented guy on the court, but I'm going to outwork them. Like, nobody knew who I was a year ago, and I'm going to work until people know who I am. Like, or even like the starting thing, it's like, it was so funny. The Mike Brown interview today was hilarious, where he's like, I don't know how he feels. It's like you're like, Keegan, you have a flat tire, and he's like, okay. Keegan, you're starting tomorrow. Okay. Keegan, you had a stellar game. Okay. It's like hilarious. Anyways, I think we picked a winner, so who knows what that'll translate to in terms of actual success and etc. Anyways,
Yeah.
um, so then he goes into like what the original lottery, the 11 non-playoff teams, the team with the worst record received 11 chances out of 66, second worst 10 chances, all the way down to the team with the best record only holding one chance. So that was how it was until 2019, right? I think 2019 is when they actually changed it to what they wanted to change it to in 2014.
You mean like I think I'm not sure. I'll look at that up. I'll look up that part of the book because they had lottery balls and like a whole big lottery machine, with the balls for many
Yeah,
years,
I think,
right?
yeah, no, they've had that since, I think since um 85, or maybe the machine came in later.
Oh, okay. This is in 1990. Oh, okay. So this is in 1990. What you quoted there.
Oh,
You
okay.
screenshotted. Come 1994, a new contraption burbled ping pong balls, each printed with a bold number from 1 to 14. The team with the worst record entered the drawing with the highest chance to come number one. Descended odds were recorded to clubs up the standings. So it's talking about this part of the book's talking about the various things that they did to change the lottery to make it more fair or whatever they were trying to do with it.
Yeah. Well, and more
Yeah.
exciting too. Like I think, I mean, I don't remember it. Of course, like I was 15 in 1985, so why would I really remember it pre 1985? But they really made it into like a can't miss kind of event for the league by having the lotto and like
Yeah,
making it
true.
its own show, and it became like one of the things as an NBA fan, like, oh yeah, you can't miss it.
That's
um
why we had a playback room for it. That's what we had the playback room for it. And we
yeah,
all we were
totally.
there, listening, watching it together. And we jumped. Yeah, got Keegan
uh,
because of it.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's exciting, it's like gambling. It's exciting, right?
Yeah, I guess
Which,
so.
I mean, I think he says in here at one point, like, if you're gonna play the lottery, you got to try and have the best odds. You're just gambling. And
Mhm.
I think for me, like, I always thought of it as like, Vlade, I think, is a gambler inherently, but he like took way too many risks. Like, like you want to have the highest upside by taking the highest risk, but like you gotta like hedge your bets sometimes too. You gotta, find like the second round guys who are gonna stick, not
True.
just the guys who are gonna be stars.
Right.
Easy for me to say, of course. So then the tankathon, the fact that tankathon was just built by some random fan, I just thought was cool. Um, the Matt Hoover software engineer guy who built tankathon, and it became like, a phenom during the process years where everybody would
Mm.
go to it, and I go to it all the time. It's freaking amazing. And then they talk about, and then so Jody Fernandez talks about Embiid when Embiid came
Yeah.
in, and I just I just highlighted that because it was Jody, and I loved what he said. His touch and everything, you could tell it was easy for him. With each make, Embiid hollered to David Griffin, shouting that Cleveland's general manager had no other choice at number one. He was not shy, said Fernandez, a native of Barcelona. For foreigners like myself, it's hard to speak and learn the league and show your personality, but he didn't have any problems doing that. I thought that was cool and kind of like an interesting. I love that kind of insight into like how he can support like international players and stuff like that, and how it's hard for them to fit in and feel at home and all that. And the stuff about Joel Embiid is just priceless, like all the Shirley Temple stuff, and
Yeah.
is hilarious. I mean,
Yeah.
and endearing. Um, so, and then when the Kings called Philadelphia vying for the chance to swipe Embiid for themselves, the Sixers quickly rebuffed. So I hadn't known that the Kings were interested in Embiid. And then it goes into
Hmm.
this whole Sacramento had launched Draft 3.0 back in May, an online challenge that crowdsourced internet basketball number crunchers. It's like, oh my God, to
Yeah.
submit their positional rankings. Their volunteer analytics team entered Sacramento's war room, and then that was the Stauskas draft.
Well,
Um,
they favored. I mean, I was gonna say they favored drafting Alfred Payton, but he didn't become a great player either. It was a kind of a weak
right.
draft, but beyond the
Yeah.
top guys. So
Yeah. It's
yeah,
just hilarious that it was like a volunteer analytics team.
yeah,
Just seems not the greatest idea, but I mean, back then maybe maybe not everyone had an analytics team, so who knows. Um, and then Daryl Morey, it talked. Okay, so Rockets general manager Daryl Morey did himself and the analytics community no favors in defending their tactics against naysayers who claimed new age executives like Sam Hinkie viewed players more like assets than people. So I think Morey's been accused of that. I think Monty has also been accused of that a little bit, like Kyle Guy when
yeah.
he
God,
left said like
yeah.
really didn't even say anything to him, and
He said
so
like two words to Hal, not two words. He just had a one phone call with Hallie, and I don't know if he said anything
yeah,
else really. So
yeah. I mean, although he did call him before it dropped and stuff like that,
yeah,
so I don't know. I mean, it's kind of like, what do you want? Like that's his job, is to move these pieces around, and yeah, I get you want him to be a human, and um, I don't know if there's a different uh like value if it's a star, but I don't know. Calling someone before Woj announces it to me is enough.
yeah, okay.
And maybe not. I mean, maybe that's still cold-hearted, but
I mean, sometimes what they could do is let a person know they're thinking about trading them, but then that'll get out to the agent, to the Woj, to the
yeah.
Shams,
I
and
mean, I
so
think it's like, and like look what happened in the whole in the like the Buddy Hield situation, where it's like the guy was almost traded and then the whole season goes sour because he's not really committed to being here. Or like I think they kept talking about that like with Orlando too, is it's just like, or especially Phoenix, where it's like, okay, you're not really committed to me and you're like overlapping me and you're not doing right by me and now I fucking want out. So it's like I think you can blow your team up just by bad vibesing it, too.
yeah,
Um, even though they weren't doing like as strategic of a tank of like just having young guys come in and like battle for the spots or anything, still like you signing like Markeith and Marcus and then trading one of them is obviously going to piss the other one off, especially when you sat down with them to like talk about how they were going to play together for a really long time. So
mhm.
I thought that was interesting. Is that there should definitely be like a human element too. So it talks about this. Let's see where to go. So it talks about, and despite his tinkering, Ainge too kept one eye trained toward contention. The executive's patience only lasted so long. The Celtics' putrid 2006-2007 campaign immediately birthed Boston's 2008 title. One may recall as the new year crept closer, Ainge kept searching for trades that both brought back future draft picks plus young players boasting upside, such as Crowder, perhaps capable of soon contributing in the postseason while still playing on a relatively inexpensive rookie contract. So he's like looking for guys that he can flip and or, you know, retain, right?
He would love Keegan Murray right now in Utah.
Yeah,
Not that we
yeah,
would trade him, but like that's the kind of player he wants. Like young player, upside, good now. You know
yeah.
that kind of
And
player.
I mean, I think their value goes up. Like for right now, the way that Utah's playing, like I think Vanderbilt's value is probably sky high, right? And like it's only going to get higher as the deadline approaches because a competitor is going to be like, we need that one piece. And there he is in Utah, right? So I don't know exactly what's happening in Utah. I think people assume things about Danny Ainge's method that may or may not be true. As far as like what he's willing to part with and what kind of success he wants to have on the floor. But I would imagine that having a single year of badness would help his talent accumulation, right?
Well, yeah. For their pick, obviously, it's the only pick that's going to matter to them is their pick. If they're bad, your record only applies to your
Right,
pick. The pick that you originally
right.
had, you may have traded it away, so it doesn't matter to you at all. But yeah, they have their pick. If they're bad, I believe. I don't think it's even protected. I think they just have their pick. But so they want to have a chance at Wemby. And like I said to my friend, or I said this to you, I think, over DM. Yeah, they only have one shot at Wemby because no one is
Yeah,
trading their first round pick this year, 2023 first round pick, unless it's protected top one or top two to get Scoot, perhaps. No one's trading that pick and
right,
allowing people to select Wemby. No one's doing that. So um, there's just
right.
one chance for every team, and even if they traded their pick, in which case they have no chance. So yeah,
Well, and I mean, and that's also kind of assuming that they are bad. Like right now, if we just stop the presses right now, they're not bad,
I think they
right?
will.
I mean, and actually, their payroll now. Okay, obviously they have a bunch of vets on their roster too, and I'm assuming that those are the people that Ainge would probably like to shed more than anyone else, like Rudy Gay, Mike Conley. Um, I don't even know who all else is there. But he brought in specifically Kelly Olynyk. Kelly Olynyk is his guy. Kelly Olynyk was part of the ITJ Crowder team, right? I
Maybe he's
mean,
the veteran mentor of their team. That
maybe.
let me look at
Yeah.
how old what his contract is. I don't know what his contract is either, but he's 31 years old and he's got 2 years left on his deal. I'm not sure if it's fully guaranteed, but yeah, I mean, he got Taylor Horn Tucker's only 21. Clarkson's 30. He's one of the guys he wants to trade, I'm sure, because he's gonna.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I don't think he wants to win in this year. I mean, like it's got Scoot and you got Wemby and you got other good players. It's a strong draft besides the top two. I'm sure he wants to try to get in that lottery. I mean, yeah. I mean, what is he?
Yeah.
He has. I mean, of course, Laurie Markkinen is playing out of his mind, but how long is that going to last? Hopefully for a long time for them, but maybe not. And you know,
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not sure which pieces he views as being
keepers or
uh,
traders and trade
yeah.
them.
I mean, I think you can like go through all of like the Utah vets on the team and kind of assume they're available, but they're also not the guys that most fans are like, "Oh, we want Vandy, we want Markkinen." Like, I think those are more foundational guys, but who knows? Um,
Yeah. I don't know either, but I do believe they're not going to have a great record at the end of the year. I'll put that in recording right here, I guess. That I do believe they'll be in the lottery for sure. Yeah, with their
yeah.
pick, with their own pick. Yeah. So
Um, So then he talks a little bit about how Brett Brown's team was amazing at
yeah,
defensively and how they sort of like innovated like modern switchability on defense. Each member of Brown's new group could seamlessly switch assignments while defending screens, quick enough and long enough to guard each rival player, no matter what their position. And then that was, the Warriors took that even farther. But I thought that was fascinating that even on a bad team, there were things happening that were worth adapting and copying, which is probably the mark of a great coach.
Yeah, they weren't they one of the top ranked defenses in the league? That was put in here somewhere in this book, I think.
Yeah, so it says they allowed just 86 points per 100 possessions, a mark that far bested Golden State's league best 97.3 team rating. By the break, Philadelphia ranked 12th overall in team defensive efficiency. Even better, Brown's crew was 8th in defense since January 1st. So that's pretty impressive for like a literal band of, misfits.
And you know that we just saw a team that plays a bunch of wings sometimes, in the Clippers. Bunch of big wings or small wings or people. What you call it? Long enough to guard each rival player, quick enough and long enough to guard each rival player no matter their position. So like, you know, your prototypical point guard, like let's say Fox or Reggie Jackson, is not going to guard a center, any center. But and in your prototypical center, like let's say he's on the Clippers, Ivica Zubac is not going to guard a point guard, but all the rest of those players on that team can guard pretty much. Well, one of the Clippers cannot guard centers, I would say, but like a lot of them can guard or smart enough, strong enough, quick enough, long enough to guard pretty much any position.
Yeah.
And then because they're smaller, they also have other skills. They've been developing other skills since they were kids, like shooting, passing, dribbling. So they can
Yeah.
do all sorts of stuff, which is a great way to think about it. I wasn't.
Well, I kind of feel like that is the entire model of Toronto,
Yeah,
right? Of the Raptors is just all wings. Like, I mean, Scotty obviously has some of them have playmaking, some of them don't. But I mean, what they had on the floor when I had turned it on earlier was Scotty. I don't think they had a single guy on the floor who wasn't 6'7",
yeah,
basically. Scotty might be 6'6", but I mean, they're just freaking huge and long, and they're going to hustle, and they're going to switch, and they're going to play their asses off.
yeah. They're gonna switch is the most
And then they
important thing.
happen to, yeah. So, anyways, I thought that was super fascinating. And also with Boston, I think Brad Stevens, they talk a lot about like Brad Stevens' amazing kind of, again, like the out of timeouts, um, just his play calling
Sure.
was really transformative. So, and I think, again, like the Utah situation now, I'll keep going back to it, but I had looked up, it's down in here somewhere, but he did the same thing where he hired the youngest, upsidey coach that he could hire on an extra long contract. So he gave Will Hardy a 5-year contract, with like extra incentives, good money, like, and it's kind of like the coach is going to grow with the team,
Hmm.
right? It's like if he totally biffs it in the first year, who really cares? That's the point, is he has all this room to grow into being a good coach, which is amazing. I see why somebody like Will Hardy would take that opportunity. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you got a smart GM. You got an owner with money.
Well, and Danny is in the position now where he comes in saying, "See what I did in Boston? I'm going to do that
Yeah,
here.
right,
Are you
right.
in?" Like,
Your record's gonna suck for 1 or 2 years, and then you're gonna be smashing. So
yeah. And the Pelicans did the same thing. The Pelicans hired Willie Green, young upside dude who I don't know if they gave him an extra long contract or not, but they are definitely following like the Ainge model of tanking, where they try and turn it around extremely quickly after jettisoning, from their original asset accumulator, who was Anthony Davis.
right.
It was just so ironic, like that they're more fun now really than they almost ever were, in my opinion. I'm not a Pelicans fan, so don't quote me on that. But um, I there's something really compelling about you know young hardcore guys who are just going to go out there and fight their asses off.
Yeah, they're it is fun for me to watch. I definitely want to win though, but eventually I
Yeah,
want to.
yeah,
I don't need to win a meaningless game in March when my record is 20 and 50, but but I do want to win. Well, I do want to compete in the playoffs as what my team to compete in the playoffs, and I want to do whatever it takes to get there. But we can talk about that at the end
yeah.
when we're discussing in tanking in general.
Whether the Kings have,
Just a general discussion of tanking beyond what the
yeah,
book talks about,
yeah,
because the book's kind of reporting. Mostly reporting is what the book is. It's
right.
not really commentary, not really.
So okay, so then he just was like talking about Boston and the Evan Turner IT Jay Crowder team.
Right.
Uh, and again, he talks about so with Danny Ainge gathering a trove of malleable wings, Stevens designed schemes where each player could slide into every spot. We were a machine, Avery Bradley says. I could do 1 through 5. I knew every set. Every guy was interchangeable. So, unlike rivals' typical shooting heavy sessions, Boston would run sets for 45 minutes straight in practice. We knew the wrinkles of it, Turner says. We squeezed everything out that Sam's Club tomato ketchup. Oh, that was funny. Everything out the Sam's Club tomato ketchup. Um, so same thing. They were going after a type because you can't teach, like as Jerry Reynolds says, you can't teach size, you can't teach speed, right? So they were going after traits and then fitting them into a system that has, in my opinion, become the prevalent system in the NBA right now, of this kind of malleable wings, being able to switch at least 1 through 4. I don't think everybody can switch 1 through 5 by any means. And that's like, a huge strength in the NBA right now.
Hmm.
And then he talks about Pablo Torre coining the trust the process, and how the that the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast adopted it, and it became like the battle call of Philly. Which I'm so curious. Like, I don't really. Philadelphia is like one of the fan bases that I don't have follow a lot of like Philly people or like know very many Philly fans or have them in my timeline or anything. So I actually don't know how they're feeling at the moment. But I can't imagine they're like super high on the team.
No, I think they booed them after the third loss. I think they booed them on the home court,
Ah,
which we did that
yeah.
in the season of Walton's first season when everyone expected them to be a playoff team. We booed them like in the fourth or fifth game when they lost. I think I
Oh,
think I might have
really?
been
Oh, yeah,
there.
that's
I think
right.
I might have been at that
Yeah.
game, but maybe I just heard it. I remember then Marvin said, "Keep that same energy with like the angry emoji with the thing." And like, no, Marvin, that's not the right look.
Sure.
Anyway, off topic. Um,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
So then if there was any remaining questions about Boston's team building strategy, onlookers clearly weren't paying attention. So he just went through like everyone that Boston like picked and how they, and I mean Danny Ainge also was good about at moving in the draft. Like I think like we all like the James Ham thing of like, oh yeah, Monty's gonna like cascade down the draft collecting assets at like every stop or whatever. Like I don't think that happens very often, but when it happens, it's Danny Ainge doing it.
mm, mm,
Um, So let's see. So and then I just was interested in the Rashawn Holmes stuff, partially because I love Rashawn, but partially because it was interesting to me that his agent was one of the ones that kept him from signing the Hinkie
yeah,
special.
yeah,
And then he actually like sources Rashawn a lot in here, which was interesting too.
right.
And Rashawn, like I was so surprised in that spaces that Rashawn was like so charming and so engaging.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I don't know why I didn't expect him to be that way, but it sort of comes off in this as well that he's funny and smart and,
Well,
you know,
is
and
his
just a
mother like a
hustler.
PhD? Is that what she does, or
Yeah, I don't I mean, she definitely has the title doctor. She might be a doctor of
okay,
theology.
okay,
That's totally a guess though, so don't quote
all
me
right,
on that. I
all
think
right.
she might be like a it's not called a pastor, I don't think. But anyways, a scholar of theology, so and then his block and steal rate projected a defensive difference maker for Brett Brown's bench unit. He was an analytics darling, Lance Pearson said. So more blocks and steals, Rashawn. Ring the bell. And then it's like you've pissed off agents, fans, and now the league. Eventually, that's going to be your demise," said one player representative. But it seems like a lot of. I think the one thing that he doesn't talk about when he's talking about how the front offices are divided between like crusty old players, or savvy old players, I should say, and analytics guys. He's like, I wonder now. So New York and LA. New York is basically CAA, and LA is basically clutch, right? I mean, there's a massive change in agent involvement in those front offices. Unless I'm wrong. I mean, he's the insider, he would know. But I feel like that's a recent development where the dominance of the players in the team are all from the same agency.
Hmm.
I wonder if that's, if that also eventually will like change the dynamics of it. But to me, it seemed like, yeah, the main people who were pissed off were agents.
Yeah.
And then the Okafor thing seemed to piss the league off because it spotlighted kind of what was happening.
Hmm.
And then, so it talks about Orlando. The Orlando stuff was interesting because I just don't have never really known much about Orlando. I don't watch Orlando or anything like that. But they've been sort of like, sputtering in a similar fashion to Sacramento for quite a while. And it sounds like, and the way that they were talking about it is like it sounded like Channing Frye was probably the one that he talked to. Who I know Channing Frye is like another like super charming, engaging dude.
Yeah.
Um, who, but it sounds like they could never figure out. It sounds like partially it was like a talent problem, or like who's the guy, who's the star, we don't know, and they kept like moving in and out of like using a lie to pose the star, um,
Yeah. Well,
replacing the guard, or
I guess you don't with those guys. That makes sense to me. Knowing a little bit about their games, it makes sense. I mean, Oladipo took off when he went to Indiana. Yeah, I think right. Was it OKC that he
yes,
took off? He took off
yeah,
on one of those teams. He didn't take off in Orlando. He was good, but he wasn't
right,
a star. Tobias was never a star. Aaron Gordon never really a star. Vucevic he was an all-star at one point, but not a clear-cut number one guy. Peyton, no. So it's like that makes sense to me that they had trouble determining. It wasn't like they could pick Durant or they picked LeBron James and they had him on the team. It's like they had
yeah,
someone that was super, 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 super good. They just had a bunch of good players, really good players. So, but
yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
wasn't sure, but I'm not a big sports guy as far as playing them. I played high school water polo, but and swimming, but I don't know how necessary that really is. But Channing Frye would know better than me. Obviously, he's a professional basketball player, but it just doesn't seem like that would be needed to like have to rally around one dude and like follow him as being the star. And I don't know. I don't see it.
I guess like the impression I got is there was just not a leader.
Okay.
Like, so it was just hard for them to like find their identity, and like because they couldn't find their identity, they never really. And then plus, it sounds like there was a similar problem of like a coaching um change out. I mean, okay, Phoenix, Orlando, and Sacramento to me all had that problem where they didn't have a stable coach who was bought into the entire plan. They just kept like hiring and firing new people, and then the players never got to like actually learn a full system. They just have to keep changing, as far as like Orlando had Jock Vaughn, and then they went to Scott Skiles, and then I think they went to Steve Clifford. Like, so they bounced around coaches too. Not as bad as Sacramento. Sacramento, I think, is egregious in how the frequency. But every time you do that, you have guys fall through the cracks, like whatever. Like, I think the conversation today on D'Lo and KC with James Ham was like Chemezi, right? Like Chemezi had worked his ass off last year to like be a starter for part of the year. Like he put all this time and energy in. He was really like an energy guy off the bench. He like spearheaded a ton of the runs. So for Alvin, like he had a certain status that now that Mike has come in is gone, right? So he has to work to get that status again, even though he's one of Mike's guys, he's technically not like a starter in the league, so he has to like reprove it, so that it's the same for all the guys. Like they have to reprove who they are every time there's a new coach or every time there's a new GM, or like it's just the
Hmm.
consistency is totally lacking, and even I mean, I guess it's not really hard to say, like, like the Brett Brown thing. Okay, it sounds like he's a pretty great coach given the talent, right? But if you never have the talent in place, how do you even know? Like putting a mandate on George Karl to win 50 games with like Boogie and like Rondo and Willie Cauley-Stein, is that a fair a fair analysis of your talent? Like I don't think so.
No.
Like I and just having that constant pressure of like you got to win a certain amount of
A
games
certain offensive rating.
instead of like how do we
Remember?
what's
Vivek
that?
wanted a certain offensive rating in one year. He wanted a 112 offensive rating, which is pretty damn high.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Like those things are not it. Those are not how you get there. Like you have to be top 10 in a bunch of different shit, And to be top 10 in a bunch of different shit, you need talent. And how do you get that talent? You find guys who are competitive within the. So anyways, again, like kind of a sidetrack there, but what was the next part here? So okay, the Jaleel Okafor stuff, like I feel kind of bad that like he says in here at one point, like, okay, so this whole shit went down with Jaleel and his group, and they got into like a street fight
Yeah.
basically, and it caused like essentially Hinkie to get fired. I mean, ultimately, that was the outcome in my opinion. But then at a later point, and like I remember at the time when Jaleel got in trouble, and it was like the total news of the league, and it was such a big deal, and he was kind of labeled as this like delinquent and like nobody can work with him kind of thing, and then like later in the book he says like if you actually knew Jaleel, like he's a great guy. He would like, take his jacket off to like make sure you're warm. Like he's such a good guy. And I feel like that happens all the time too, where like people get like tagged as like, and I'm not saying this for Boogie. I know like I have a special love and affection for DeMarcus because he was a king, and because I found his skill set to be like so incredible as like a lover of big man over the course of the time that I've watched the NBA. But I know he had personality defects that, are the reason why he's not in the league now. But with Jaleel, like I don't feel like I ever heard that next part of like he's a great guy. This was like a mistake. And the same thing like it talks about with Christian Wood, like I feel like Christian Wood is like bounced around from team to team to team and hasn't really been able to stick. But it turns out that Christian Wood was like a Hinkie guy, and Hinkie was trying to like make it right by him and pay him out because he had been on this Hinkie special. and then Hinkie got canned, you know? So it's like, I just think that guys like fall through the cracks a lot more often than we know. And I just hope that I'm keeping an open mind for like, you know, like the Tari Easons of the world who get slandered, you know, and then fight their way back, I
Hmm.
guess, is what I'm trying to say. It's just like it's hard. I think it's so easy to look from the outside and be like, oh, these guys are millionaires, you know, like life is easy, everything's great for them. But then it's like, no, I mean, this can be really fucking hard. Like even when Evan Turner was talking about his mental health being on Philadelphia too, is it's like this is hard, you know? And so, anyways, all that to say, I'm rooting for Christian Wood this year, which I wasn't necessarily before.
Okay, yeah, because you
Um,
learned about his story in the book, about how he was taken in by Hinkie and Hinkie liked him,
yeah,
and yeah,
yeah. Maybe it's just like knowing a little bit more about someone's
sure,
personal
yeah, yeah,
story, you know, or just like rooting for him to not be like labeled as that kind of, you know, delinquent with Okafor and stuff like that. I feel like Jahlil Okafor kind of never overcame that. Um, Also, maybe he just wasn't good enough to get retained. I mean, you know, I don't know where he is now. I could have looked him up to see. I mean, maybe he's playing overseas or what have you. Um, Let me see here. So Jalen, then we're at like the Jalen Brown. So then we're at the point where like Boston has actually. So even though they had the good playoff team with IT and Evan and all those people, I don't think that they ever thought that team was going to be a championship contender, right?
right,
But as he like pieced out that team and used it to develop basically Jalen, Robert, and Jason, now they have a championship contender. Who knows for how long and all of that stuff. I mean, time changes all of this stuff, right? But and Ben Simmons, and then it talks about how that's the same year that Philly got Ben Simmons. So that was supposed to be the ticket, but now, of course, Ben Simmons is gone. Um, and who knows what else going to happen with like the Harden, Morey, Moneyball situation this year.
yeah. We'll see.
So while Danny Ainge only bottomed out his roster for one full campaign, Boston's surplus of future draft capital, thanks to the league's weighted lottery system, allowed Ainge's organization to leapfrog teams in the middle of the NBA standings and back into contention. The picks either introduced more talented phenoms like Marcus Smart and Brown, and then Jason Tatum in 2017, or Ainge traded those valuable chances for already established players like Isaiah Thomas.
Yep.
So, and then the league officials pushed a cleaner version of flattening the worst team's odds, which was suggested back in 2014. It was a priority for the NBA. And
In the book, they covered 2014, right, and it was shot down. It wasn't approved, but then
yeah, so that was the one where like I think it was Presti was like the spearheading not doing it,
right,
right? Like you were saying, like because they viewed it as like their really only opportunity to get better was to have better odds in the draft.
right.
And then he was the only one that voted against it this time, though,
Hmm.
because sentiment had like changed so drastically. Let's see. Then he talks about the Lakers, like how the Lakers like exist kind of out of this system because I mean, partially he says that like the fact that they were so loyal to Kobe Bryant, like also kind of adds to their mystique in that like a huge star can come there and hopefully be treated in a similar way, even though Bryant's last 3 years were just a train wreck, you
Yeah,
know. Um, but just the fact that they're in like a huge desirable market makes their method, I think, different than everyone else's, or at least they've always been different than everyone else. They just buy shit.
Yeah, they can. They
Um,
can. I'd say Miami's similar
yeah,
just because of the market. It's not really, it doesn't have the storied history of LA Lakers, but because of that market, it's very similar. Right? Except that they're smart. They're a smart
yeah.
franchise, unlike the Lakers.
Well, and I was surprised. Like, they're one of the few. So I've been doing this like project of just going down all the different salaries, like from top to bottom, and then I'll just break them out by team and like what are they paying in tax and what are they paying. And the Heat are one of the few that is under the luxury tax that I would consider themselves as a championship contender, right? Um, I mean, there's some people in the tax like the Lakers and stuff who definitely are not championship contenders. Um, but but yeah, and then there's like the Heat, the Blazers are like right at the cap. They're at like 150 million. Like they're just where you're supposed to be without going into the tax. I mean, it's interesting. I don't know what the conclusions are. I just was doing it, out of curiosity. But anywho, um,
One thing is the Clippers are, I'm sure, above the tax, and they're in the tax. I've
yeah.
heard that James Ham said it. I'm sure you heard it too because it's on James Ham's show, the Kingsby podcast. That he makes 700 something million per year in dividends from his Microsoft stock. He makes way
Holy
more
crap.
than the cost to of the
That's
salaries. And of course, the
crazy.
Clippers make
That is
money too.
crazy.
They spend money, but they also make money
Yeah.
from ticket sales, from franchise merchandise, and concessions, and TV rights, and blah blah blah. They make a bunch of money too, but they get like freaking. He gets that much money personally from his dividends, so he's cool.
I remember the Warriors are paying. So the Warriors are paying. Um, they're paying 47% of their of their salary. They're paying basically half salary and half tax. They're paying like 350 something $1 million, and 47% of that is luxury tax because they're a repeater
Right,
too.
right,
So they're paying the most luxury tax in the entire league, and then the Clippers are right after
yeah,
them. The Clippers are paying the most salary in the entire league, but the Clippers are also paying like well over 40% in luxury tax. I believe I'd have to look at it to be sure, but yeah, it's kind of mind-boggling. I mean, if you make it back, who cares, right? And if you win, who cares? And I don't necessarily think it necessarily equates to a win percentage, as far as like dollar amount to a win percentage. But at the end of the season, I'm going to go back and like assign a win percentage to every dollar
right.
just to see what that looks like. Anyways, another sidetrack.
Hmm.
So he just talks about the Lakers and that they'll always be like the franchise for icons and etc. And I mean, again, this season their start. It's funny because like last night I was finishing this book and one of the Worldwide Wob podcasts came on YouTube, and he was just like going off on the Lakers, and it was cracking me up because it's just such the opposite of it should be. Such a shit show. Like they tore down everything they built. Like, and their stars, like the talent that they drafted, which they actually drafted really well, are basically stars all satellited all out across the league now. Which if they would have just kept that, like Julius Randle,
D'Angelo Russell, Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball.
yeah,
Yeah,
like they would have been really fucking good, you
yeah.
know. I mean, theoretically, I guess they could have figured out a way to fuck that up too. So who knows?
And they signed LeBron off the street.
Um,
They didn't
yeah,
resign Randall because they wanted to get LeBron. They wanted to have the space for LeBron.
right.
But I mean, so scratch Randall. You got D'Angelo Russell. Is he still there? Or was he already gone? I don't know.
I think he might have been
All right.
gone. I don't remember when they traded him to the Nets, and I think that might have been some kind of weird personality thing. But they at least had Brandon Ingram. They had
Larry Nance,
Larry Nance
Jordan
Jr. They
Clarkson.
had Lonzo Ball. They had Caruso.
Yeah.
Um,
Kuzma.
Josh Hart.
Yeah.
Josh Hart's going to be huge this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kyle Kuzma. Like, so, and the Nets did the same thing, right? The Nets
Built to the
had
draft.
that
Yeah.
young,
Yeah.
fun, yeah, and they jettisoned it all for basically KD and Kyrie, which we'll see how that works out. But I mean, we're going on 3 years of it. You know, this is the third year of it potentially not working. They're heavy in the tax too. Anyways, um, so and then he talks about how stars change teams more often now and more frequently, and how they want to play with other stars. Um, and sort of the LeBron James effect of go where you want to go and, you know, empower the player to, get their max contract and all of that kind of stuff. LaMarcus left Portland for San Antonio. KD departed OKC for Golden State. Kawhi flocked to the Clippers. Whenever a situation grows stale, teams with cap space. So I mean that's like the other asset is cap space, right? So teams with cap space are eager to offer another max contract. There's only so many All Stars, says Kentucky head coach Sean Calipari, and we know that's true. Um, so whether clubs tank to acquire those alphas with a top pick or luck into an MVP like the Bucks did with Giannis, I don't know. I didn't take a good picture of that, but basically that's how they can turn it around is by attracting big free agents, growing your own talent or
Yeah, the Bucks are a good example to look at for us, because the Bucks have a smaller population
yeah,
than Sacramento. Memphis is also, not a destination market, and they're doing really well. I've read that they have built through trades in the draft, and they have not tried to sign free agents. They're not trying to make the space to sign free agents, even though they have a good record now. They're still building through trades in the
yeah,
draft and building up from the ground up in the draft. The Bucks owner said, someone named Mark Lazary, if that's how you say his name, says Bucks ownership wouldn't approve tanking their 2014-15 season. At the end of the day, my thing is we're never doing that, Lazary says. We're going to do whatever we can to win. I get that people get the way to rebuild is through the draft. My view is the way you rebuild is you pick great players. Well,
yeah.
so that's what they didn't
So
tank.
they did. I mean, they got Chris Middleton from the G League, right?
No, no, he was a pick, but by then I
Oh,
think they
was he?
picked him.
I thought he was a
You could be right. You
shooting.
could be
Yeah.
right. You could be right. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. But.
So it took them a while to to grow though. Like they didn't know that Giannis was going to be Giannis the first like year or two.
Right, and they picked Parker,
Uh,
Jabari Parker. I mean, he wasn't a great player. He didn't turn
that's
out to be a
right.
great player.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
But he was the best one in training camp though, John.
yes. He was the talk of the training camp, talk of the camp.
Um, so then he says New Orleans has followed the NBA's modern tanking rubric perfectly. Like Danny Ainge in Boston, the Pelicans moved Anthony Davis before it was too late. Like Hinkie in Philadelphia, Griffin valued multiple chances at picking stars in the first round and planned to develop his young roster of lottery picks with a shiny new practice facility. So I think we can see like that. Yeah, New Orleans has this like huge depth. They have a young coach, massive bench depth that's homegrown at this point. A couple of like the pieces are like trade pieces like Devonte Graham or what have you, but mostly it's and then Zion is their star, but they don't even need him to be good really because they traded for CJ too. So they've been really savvy, in my opinion.
That's good for them because
Um,
people were talking about moving
yeah,
the franchise from New Orleans because of the
yeah.
engagement there.
And then I think I'm almost at the end of my little thread. So can you believe it? So this was like Brett Brown. Somebody asked him a question. It's like, can you believe that? Somebody to get high draft picks, dumping games. Brown grinned. I don't know what you're talking about. So he's just, joking
Yeah.
around, being a funny, which is interesting. So, and then, I mean, I just pulled like some of the quotes about the different, like, here's the meme about Chris Kaman on the bench down here. There's Will Hardy's contract. And then some of the Danny Ainge stuff, along with like some of the Utah stuff that's happening now. The Noah basketball tech thing is really interesting that Hinkie was a big fan of the Noah basketball tech. And the Raptors this year put in these new scoreboards that basically like they rate your free throws and stuff, and they tell you how to fix your shot. It's pretty fascinating
Yeah, I saw those.
stuff, and yeah, really cool. I wish we would have those. If we're not going to have a shooting coach, get us those. Um, and then, Daryl Morey info, which I know a lot about Daryl Morey at this point, maybe more than I want to. I'll just be very curious to see how that all shakes out. And then the Brett Brown just continues to be like a bright light wherever he goes. And, I think them pulling him back in for San Antonio this year is interesting, or like, you know maybe like his best value is that optimism that he's able to, like, basically, hype guys up who maybe aren't winning a bunch of games, but he just sounds like a great guy. Spencer Hawes's Obama toilet paper, of course. And then the Mike Zarin draft wheel. So he had that weird, idea that you could have like a 30-year cycle or a 5-year cycle that would like yield picks out to teams not based on win loss. That would just like generate, aggregation of the draft picks out to teams. So that's here's the PowerPoint that is that, and then Jake's podcast is in here. DeMarcus's Snake in the Grass tweet, of course, because it's classic. Um, and I put Utah's list of assets, although I think you said this list of assets is kind of crap. So there's probably a better one out there.
Yeah, I think it's incomplete. It
And
doesn't have the
that,
Cleveland picks in there. Whatever Cleveland gave them is not in there. Yeah,
yeah,
so even though it's
yeah,
titled
yeah.
it's
So,
titled A Comprehensive Guide to Utah Jazz Future Draft Picks. It's like September
but it
1st.
doesn't have the
Yeah.
Cleveland.
Forgot to update it.
It even like talks about the it even talks about the
Yeah,
trade,
right.
so that's weird that it doesn't have them, because that's like the first part of the whole
Right.
thing. But anyways,
Anyway.
there's better ones out there that I just haven't put them on here. Um, so yeah, I mean, do you have anything you want to say about the book, or do you want to have like a small discussion about tanking in general, or?
Well, I think I talked about everything that I wanted to say about the book. It has, you already said, it has a lot of King stuff. I quoted the Milwaukee owner. There's like, there's full tanking, which is Philadelphia 76ers, the too far tanking of the Hinkie. One season tanking like Boston, which is hard to pull off. And there's then the no tank at all, just be bad and pick right and get better, like Milwaukee did. And that's probably even harder to do. But and then I pretty much said everything in my thread except for the stuff about the tanking. So if we get into that, it's about tanking in general, not so much about the book, but this brought it up for me. This book, talking about tanking brought it up for me. So yeah,
Yeah, some of it, I mean, like I said, some of it was a little difficult to read as a Kings
yeah,
fan who tries to maintain, like, I really, really, like, it's really what I do for fun. Like, you know, my son's operation, and it's been a really hard couple of years, and this is my
hmm,
outlet. So I try and, like, maintain this level of optimism with it that is hard to maintain with a bad team.
yeah,
So, like, reading through all of their shitty mistakes that I think everyone knew that were mistakes at the time,
hmm,
It was rough,
Hmm.
I have to say.
There's a
And the fact that like I feel like a lot of our problem is just this like lack of patience and consistency. Whereas like even if we would have drafted Giannis and he wouldn't have been ready in 2 years, would we have even like given him the time to really develop? You know what I mean? Like I feel like we gave up on guys so fast. And I know it's unlikely if somebody's super talented and working their ass off, they wouldn't make it in somewhere else. But I just, yeah, I mean, I just feel like you need some consistency, some level of that. Like the whole thing about hiring the young coach for this extended period of time. Like that not only gives the coach security, it gives the organization some cover and it gives the players security. The players know, have confidence that who they're dealing with is going to stay the same, you know? So I don't know.
Yeah, serious. That's probably why you're saying you don't want to tank because of that stuff. You would not like to tank because of all that stuff, that instability, that trading away good players that are they're decently good, but they're not great. You trade them away, or they're getting older. You trade them away to get picks or young players, and they're going to be worse right now. Obviously, the picks are going to be not even
I
players, and
Are you saying tank like right now?
no, um, not yet this season, but there's a big
Right.
incentive to try to give yourself a shot, this season. The odds are so screwed up that you
Yeah.
could be like eighth and still get to number one. So,
Yeah.
because that's screwed up. The odds are what the odds are. I just think they're screwed up, but they're not screwed up in general. They're just silly, in my opinion. But yeah, not yet. We're still trying to. I mean, maybe now for me. I mean, let me just start from the beginning a little bit. Not the beginning, but like lay out what I'm trying to say. The bottom line is, and this may sound stupid, especially to non-Kings fans or people that they may laugh at me, but like I want my team to compete and win championships. I don't. The play-in is like a stop along the way, like it was for the Memphis Grizzlies, whatever 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That's what the play-in should be like when you've got a bunch of young guys or whatever the situation is. But you get some, you bloody your spear in the play-in, and next year you're in the playoffs and you're making a different. You're competing in real meaningful games. I want them to try to win meaningful games, meaning championships or like at least Western Conference Finals, getting there and losing or whatever. I
Yeah.
want them to do really well, and I don't care about. I think like a meaningless game in March. To me, it's meaningless. I know David Bruce would disagree, and totally respect David, but like I think it's meaningless because if your record sucks, right? And I think I don't want to misquote you, and I won't misquote you because I won't quote you, but I just think you said something along the lines of at some point the losses are more beneficial for you than the wins. And this was last year,
Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
losses will bring you talented players that can make a difference towards winning meaningful games in April and May and June, instead of a meaningless game in March when you suck. So like just try to give yourself the best chance. And Milwaukee did it without tanking. Miami's got a great destination, so scratch them off. They're not a good example. But Toronto did it. Well, I don't know if they tanked. I don't know, but like so it can be done without tanking. But it's hard. For a market like Sacramento, where we're not going to sign impactful free agents because of our great market. We're not doing that, and
Yeah.
it's just tough. And but I'm kind of advocating for tanking for us, but like you know, the draft is set up to give the worst record the best pick, and the lottery is there to discourage tanking. The plan is there to encourage winning. So it encouraged us to win, try to win, and get that play-in spot. Our team, our owner, but you know, basically the bottom line is for me is with the draft, not the lottery. The draft is give bad teams good players so that there can be parity in the league as best as we can do in basketball, which is harder to do than in a sport where there's a lot of players on the field like football. Give some
Yeah.
try to create some parity which sucks in the NBA. It's better this year than it is in prior years, but it still sucks compared to the NFL, for example. But that's partially because there's only five players on the court, and they're two-way players. Each one of them's a two-way player. They play both offense and defense at any one time, so it's a lot harder to. There's a lot more riding on individual players, on like one player and two players. There's a lot more riding on those two good players.
I mean, maybe you even implement something like, I've seen a lot of people with like a lot of plans to like make change the draft, do this, do that, like, but what if you just say like, I guess, and the tanking is a problem to trying to like increase parity because again, it's like the intention factor, right?
Yeah,
But if you're saying you're a team who has not made the play in or the playoffs for like 5 years, you automatically get an extra draft pick. Now, would teams tank for that? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, maybe that's more of an impetus to be bad. But then you have like, and like the mediocrity that Philadelphia was talking about of being like stuck in this like perpetual cycle of purgatory,
yeah.
they were still fucking making the playoffs. Like, that's what's like so, like, the Kings have not even made the playoffs. You know what I mean? So the Kings aren't even mediocre. They're just shit
But they're
always.
not bad enough to get good players. You
Yeah.
know, in the draft, they're not bad enough to get good players in the
Yeah.
draft.
Yeah. And I think a big part of the problem too is they don't ever have the assets to like sell off for big asset hauls. Like, I mean, like you look at what Utah just did is they took their two most valuable players, moved off them. I mean, I guess you could even argue that they should have moved off them last year, but
Sure.
um, they could have moved off them quicker. But I mean, Danny Ainge came in and moved off them pretty much right away, where it was like that first round bounce was it. That was the answer to the question, and then it was like everything's for sale. And so I guess I don't know. I see what the Kings are doing right now. I'm hoping that we can turn things around. I love Mike Brown. I think he's going to instill like, a system. I think he's going to have guys playing really hard, but I'm worried that Vivek will get bored and lose patience,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and then it's like they'll change everything again. And like if we pulled everything apart right now, to me, we would get rid of De'Aaron, get rid of DeMontis, and I'm emotionally attached to those guys, right? And like I think he says in here, it's different. You have an emotional attachment, especially like if your team makes a deep run into the playoffs. Of course, you don't think of that as mediocrity. But for us, it's like we've just been bad this whole time.
Yeah.
So if the goal is to win, like, yeah, of course. Now, do I think we need to take a year to see where we're at, to see if there's any way of like ever achieving,
Making it work.
you know,
Yeah. Getting there.
yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
totally do, especially like, but again, I think that's more of an emotional response than an analytical one.
Well, okay, here's how I would say two things is that from talking to me that I'm less emotionally attached to any player, at least until we're winning again. I'm not
Yeah.
that's me though. That's me. That's my personality or my whatever you want to call it. I'm less attached to this to De'Aaron or Demontis or Keegan or anyone. I just want to win.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever players. I don't want criminals and I don't want, yeah, criminals, essentially. But anyone else that's a basketball player that can play in the NBA, that can, with them being together, can lead to winning, yeah, that's what I care about. And I understand your perspective is probably more standard to be a fan of these players. You see their faces, unlike football, sort of not as much as you see more than baseball. To be a fan of the players and to root for them and so forth. I guess
But I mean, in a way, that's like a protection mechanism, right? Because the team has been so bad. I don't, like last year, I think when things started breaking down, all I really did was watch like Tyrese and Davion until we traded Tyrese, and then I watched like DeMontis and Davion. Like I mean, because I'm committed to the team, because I have an emotional connection to the team, because I believe fandom is like an organic,
Okay, yeah, you
you
can't choose
know,
it. You don't choose who you.
like I can't choose it. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I just so I don't know. I mean, there could be something that happens that I just can't fan anymore too. Who knows? Since it's organic, I don't have a lot
Sure,
of control over it.
sure.
But yeah, I hope springs eternal. I'm hopeful. But yeah, I do wish, and I do think that trading Tyrese for DeMontis was a flashy big move, and I hope it works.
I just think, and I could be wrong, that it would depend upon the execution, but that not doing at least a minor tank, yeah, not doing at least like a 1.5 year, 2 year, two trade deadlines, one off season, whatever reset. It's a lot easier to become good again that way than it is to start from where we're at, where we were 30 and 52 last season. We probably were better than that. We probably could have played De'Aaron and Delamos a couple games at the end of the season and won a couple more games.
Yeah,
Maybe we're like 33, 34, 35, and whatever that would be. But we weren't that
yeah,
good. And we're going from there. We're trying to become relevant and thread the needle all the way to the championship, or at least to like the semifinals, the second round. I mean, that's just going to be tough. In my
yeah,
opinion, than it would be to try to just like reset everything and gain a bunch of assets and start drafting and start taking in bad contracts with other draft picks and doing the whole process. It would be easier to do that. Maybe not for people
yeah,
that hate losing any game. Like, I just want to win the what I call quote unquote the important games. I don't care about losing the meaningless games. What I call quote
right.
unquote the meaningless games. I don't care about that. And other people do. They never want to. If some guys that have a podcast, I won't name it because, but they think like if you ever try to lose, you're a loser. Blah blah blah. That kind of talk. And like, I just want to win. I want to win, but I don't. I want to win in
Yeah,
June. In June is when I want to
right,
win.
right.
Okay.
I guess like my thing about the team as built right now, about the Sacramento Kings as built right now, is I think
Yeah, right now.
on paper we need another star. That's what I really think is on paper. Now, having said that, I mean, what does that mean on paper? That means that we're 24th in salary. We're not competitively paying for talent. If if your talent is theoretically being compensated for their level of talent, then that would reflect that our level of talent is not that high. Having said that, the Grizzlies are behind us in payroll. Um, you know, so there's always the chance that you can like outperform, you know, what's on paper, in my opinion, but that's more rare than than I think just adding talent is. So I don't know. And it's looked, I do not want to be a pessimist. I strive to be an optimist in all things. I'm going to watch every game this season, whether it's good or bad, whether we suck or not. Like I've done it for years, but like I said, on paper, I think we need one more star. Like I think we need, and I don't even want to swap people out for other people or any of that stuff. I just think we need like one more great wing, and we would have a really good chance of being able to start a build towards a contender. I don't think that would even make us a contender. I think that would put us in on the path to the purgatory that they were trying to save from.
Yeah, but then what I would want is well, you know what I want, but like if we're doing that, like take the next step upward without going downward at all, and then take the next step somehow, and somehow the next step. I mean, yeah, like do like the Milwaukee owner said, but Lazary, draft well,
Yeah,
pick good players, whatever pick you got, like David says, pick a good player, whatever pick you got. There's mistakes in the
Yeah.
draft. There's ways to get better to make a good choice in the draft wherever you're at. So find a good player and pick them and
Yeah.
make a good,
I think,
yeah.
I mean, what I think is really valuable about this book is that it definitely brings us to now, right?
Hmm.
It definitely brings us to like this point in time where the conventional wisdom is that the de facto rebuild is this extremely quick, like, Ainge brand turnaround where you bottom out for like a year or 2 years max, um, and then you go from there. However, there's also the OKCs of the world, which, like I said, like I don't even exactly know how long their tank has been. They continue to have like extremely supportive and enthusiastic fans and media and stuff like that. But I think people are beginning to like get to the point of like, when is the turnaround exactly? When do we start competing?
Yeah.
So, but regardless, like I guess as a fan, I would rather have a cycle of a mediocre team followed by a championship contender than a cycle of continuously bad or a cycle of long-term tanking that yields like just cool rookies, that are just interesting. Like, um, which has been sort of, even like I really believe, and again, like I get all the like behavior issues and all that stuff, but I really believe if they would have just put a lot more talent around DeMarcus and IT and Rudy, it could have been something. But they didn't really have the assets to do that,
Hmm.
right?
They
They
traded a lot of
never
their assets
traded.
for Rudy. Yeah.
Right. So it was always a win now. And I get like more of like the national narrative of like you're always doing the short-sighted trade or the short-sighted, plan because we have been.
Yeah.
So,
Anyway, this is good.
yeah.
Um, it was good to talk about.
I
Good to get my feelings off my chest. Essentially, for me, because like I know that most people that I interact with on Twitter Spaces and Twitter, also, except for like Will Griffin, is are against tanking, for whatever reason, for various reasons. But I'm not like. I mean, it just makes sense in certain situations for me. That's all.
Yeah.
I'm not super like gotta do it, but like if for
Yeah.
Sacramento, small market and yeah. Anyway, don't want to get into another discussion. I
I
was trying to
agree.
wrap up there, but anyway, yeah,
Well, yeah. No, we've been going for like almost 2 hours, and but I mean, suffice it to say, incredible book, very thought provoking. I feel like there's actually a lot of like avenues, threads that you could pull from the book, that we didn't even talk about.
yeah, definitely,
There's just so much in here. Like you said, the amount of sources that he has, like the way that he follows, like the multiple team narratives, the personality conflicts, like just there's just so much in here. So it was a really a tremendous book.
it was great.
Um,
It was a great book. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, so what do you want to read next?
Well, I think I like the idea of that spaced out book. It's more of an
Okay.
analytics type shooting and offense
Yeah,
and defense because how you respond to the offense book, right? It's kind of a how.
I'm really excited for that one because it has pictures too. It has like,
Oh, nice.
it has it has like pictures of plays and pictures of like the space on the court. And I love visualization. That's like my new passion. So yeah. All right, cool, groovy.
When is it coming out
Um,
now, or is it out now, or is it?
I believe it's out now. I guess the other thing we should think about is the actual calendar, and maybe I'll DM you with like dates that would work because I don't want to have a space on a Kings game and then also Thanksgiving
Yeah, sure.
this month. So we'll work around those two things.
Okay, cool. That sounds great. And it's November 1st when it comes out, so it'll be coming out right away, pretty soon here.
Oh,
We'll have
perfect.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully it'll be an ebook too
Yeah, on November
at the
1st,
same time.
Kindle at least on November 1st. So
Okay,
probably all the other
excellent.
ones too if you use other ones. So
Yeah. All right, awesome.
okay, cool. Talk
Are
to you.
you still into this? Or we can always like take a break
No,
too.
no, I definitely am into it. I like reading and but I find stuff to distract me from whatever book I'm reading, you know, like
Oh, totally.
and like I
Same.
don't finish books. So I like to
Yeah,
read, I like to finish,
having
but
this deadline is really helpful for me. I need deadlines.
I certainly would have finished it without the deadline this month, this today for today. You know, I was like, I read about half a book in the past few days, but yeah. Anyway,
All right.
okay.
All right, cool, man.
Talk to you later.
Have a good
All
night.
right, bye.